Dads of Reddit, what's your best don't tell mom story? Not dad but son. When I was about 5 years old I was playing hide and seek with my mom and dad. Dad would pick a spot for me to hide and mom would come looking. I brought my sons, 5 and 10, to Circus in Las Vegas for a weekend. I lost the younger one for a full 5 minutes at one point. Scariest 5 minutes of my life. And mom never heard about it. When I was a kid, my dad would mow the lawn and then sneak up to the local dive bar and have a beer before my mom noticed he was done. I grew up in a town of roughly 200 people and the bar was 2 blocks away, so it was totally feasible. My dad used to bring me with him, bribe my silence with a $1 bag of Redskin peanuts and a can of Mountain Dew. My mom always knew because I'd slip up about the peanuts a day or two later. Fast forward to being 24. I just moved to a new state after grad school with my then boyfriend's job. I was underemployed at the time and my only company was my new kitten. I didn't tell my parents, but I think my dad always knew I was miserable. One day I got a package from home that was 1 pound of Redskin peanuts. He tracked down the vendor from the bar and bought them in a bulk bag. Still warms my heart when I think about it 3 years later. My mum went on a relaxing ladies only holiday with her friends for 2 weeks when my brother and I were 5 and 8 respectively. 2 hours after we waved goodbye to her at the airport, my brother managed to drop an entire drawer on his foot and sever his entire little toe. The doctors weren't sure if they could save it, but they succeeded. By the time mum got home my brother had a bandage around his toe and as far as he was concerned he'd just had an owie. I don't think she found out until about 10 years later when my brother said, "Hey, remember when I almost lost my toe while mum was on holiday lol." That was a memorable family dinner to say the least. At 16 my parents helped me get a car. The keys to freedom were per dad, no tickets, pay my own gas and maintenance, and per mom, home by curfew after a few close calls negotiating a few extra minutes with upset mom. Dad recommends I call him if I'm cutting it close. Really? From then on, I'd call dad. He'd tell mom that he would wait up, aka fall asleep in the lazy boy. This was a 2 birds 1 stone deal. He got parenting cred from mom, go on to bed, honey, and a good night snap in the lazy boy until I drifted home. Miss you, dad. My oldest caught me being the tooth fairy. She agreed that telling mom or her brother might ruin it for them more. She still gets her silver dollar if she loses a tooth. I just don't have to be such a ninja to give it to her. You know those noisemaker gunpowder bangy things? Explaining to my daughter that you can put them in your hand and headbutt them to make them explode. We went through an entire packet of them that day. One night I was enjoying a small bit of ice cream after my 4-year-old daughter went to bed. She came downstairs and caught me, so I offered her a small bite. But since she was supposed to be in bed, I said don't tell mom. She assured me she wouldn't. My wife wouldn't have cared anyway, but it was a fun little game to play. After she went up to bed and I was down on the couch, she snuck into the master bedroom where mom was resting. She told mom that I had let her have some ice cream, and she was afraid of sugar bugs, so could she please brush her teeth again. My wife just laughed at me the next day. Little shitty ratted me out to brush her teeth. Something she doesn't like doing anyway. Little shitty ratted me out to brush her teeth. I'm pissed that you're a narc, but proud of your concern for dental hygiene. Buying extra candy for Halloween. Was afraid my wife wouldn't pick up enough. She works at Costco, so I took my daughter to the store and told her we'd buy stuff we like, that way we could eat it all year if we didn't use it, but we had to hide it from my wife until Halloween. We have a no lying rule, so I told my daughter we'd tell her mom after she bought her candy at work in a few days. When my wife got home from work that night, my daughter immediately said, "Daddy, can I please tell mommy about the candy?" Right in front of my wife. I'll be honest, I'm just glad that my 8-year-old daughter is such a terrible liar. When I was young, we had the typical parent dynamic of 1:1 strict lenient ratio. Mom was laid back and figured we were allowed to find our own fun while my dad was more critical. However, both agreed on the no underage drinking policy. So my brother, fresh out of freshman year and with his typical 15 bro egging him on, snuck tequila out of my parents' liquor cabinet and took about 5 shots each while my parents were sleeping upstairs. Almost immediate regret. Half an hour later, there's a cycle of being totally obliterated on the couch and worshipping the porcelain god. The whole while they're sneaking around to not wake up my folks. The next morning, my dad pulls my brother aside and asks what happened the night before. My brother tries to blow it off, but my dad just dead-eyes him and says that tequila made its way into the toilet somehow. I don't care if it was out one end or the other. Brother fesses up. My dad nods, slaps him on the arm, and says, I think this is one lesson your mother doesn't need to hear about. For literally a year, my mom was under the impression that elementary classes ended at 5 instead of 3. Each day, my dad would pick me up from school at 3, which is at the water's edge, and take me 2 miles down to cross the river and play at a massive park for 2 hours. Then we'd go home and do normal family stuff like listen to mom and dad fight while I play some Spider-Man 2 in the freedom of my room. Not a dad. I'm a mum. But in my experience, telling my kids don't tell mum is a lost cause. A few years ago when my oldest 2 were around 3-4, their dad took them to the park. I told everyone dinner would be ready when they got back, so no ice creams or sweeties this time please. When I opened the door, both boys looked at me, looked at each other, and said in unison, we didn't have an ice cream. Husband stood behind them face palming. Edit. Hooah woke up to gold. Thank you. Your stories have really made me chuckle. And just to reassure everyone out there, the 2 boys concerned are now teens and have, mostly, refined parental deception mode. So I absolutely do not know that they sometimes get off the school bus or stop early to buy sweets. Or that they are secretly saving to buy their little brother a cool gift for Christmas. Happened just last week. We do dates with our kids about once a month. Just for one-on-one time with each of them. I told my wife my son, he's 6, and I were going out for dinner and ice cream. We saw Dr. Strange instead. No regrets. The boy has maintained the secret. I'm at home, hanging out with my 2-year-old daughter while mom is at work. I'm drinking a beer, and set it down for a second to go to the bathroom. My daughter is really smart for her age, and knows not to touch things that aren't hers. But I guess leaving the beer just out of reach made it too tempting to her. She grabs a chair, puts it under the dresser I had set it on, and climbs up and grabs my beer. I come back in the room just as she's taking a big Olay swig. She hated the taste and spit it out instantly. But will never tell my wife about that one. To this day my daughter refers to my beer as my icky. Edit. Thanks, Reddit, for making this my top post. How I gotta hope to God my wife doesn't see this. My dad has done something similar to letting me play hooky. When I was in middle school I did not have many friends and I would get picked on. So some days I would get depressed about how the day was going and I would go to the main office and say I was sick. Which was really just a ploy so I could get out of school early and go home. When my dad would pick me up he'd realize I wasn't sick and how I wouldn't want to go school anymore for that day. When he saw this we would drive to get some ice cream or go to the movies. Something that was fun for me at the time. Doing this helped me a lot when I was little. And so far the only people who know about this is my dad and I. Obligatory not a dad but. We're from the UK. And when I was really young and saw my dad on weekends, he used to drive over 100 miles an hour with me egging him on all the way. Always at the end as he pulled up home he'd tap his nose and say don't tell your mum. Of course the first thing I did was tell her. And she'd just hut, laugh and say he was terrible. Looking back I thought it was weird nobody really cared. Turned out his car was European and the speedometer was in kilometers. Son of dad here. In 4th grade I got into a fight at school. This was during the first recess period of the day. So it wasn't even 9 AM yet. Both of us got sent to the principal's office and I literally spent the rest of the day there. I ended up getting a 1-day suspension because the other kid got a bloody nose. My dad picked me up from the office and drove me around for a while and we talked about it. He just asked questions and I answered them. He took me to Dairy Queen to get some ice cream. And then we went to the park for an hour or so to play around. When we got home he told me to pretend that he had yelled at me for fighting and that I was sorry. But really he told me that he was proud of me for defending myself and even happier that I had won the fight. So my kid texts me while I'm at work and says, "Can you talk right now?" He never does this. So I know something's up. Sure, give me a call. Phone rings within seconds. Listen. It broke. And I'm not 17. Okay. I got what it broke means. But what with the "I'm not 17" is my response. I can't buy plan B unless I'm 17. Where are you? Home. Okay. Give me 15 minutes. Off I went to the closest pharmacy and picked up the plan B. She didn't get pregnant. Also, totally told his mom. Pro tip, we always tell mom if we aren't divorced. The amount of judgment in the responses to this is staggering. You sound like an amazing parent. Not only did your son know exactly what to do in that scenario, he has such a good relationship with you that he was able to tell you about it and ask you for help. You should both be proud. Your son is clearly a level-headed and responsible young man and you and his mom are clearly doing an amazing job raising him. Me, 11 at the time. My older brother, 17, and my dad were on holiday in Switzerland staying in a Verbier hotel. My brother went out and got wasted pretty much every night. One night me and my dad actually had to go out and carry him home. He was sat on a bench in a t-shirt trying to smoke a twig. But that's not the main story. I'm awoken one morning to a phone call from my dad screaming, "Pack your luggage. We are leaving now." I'm thinking that's weird, we're not going home for a week. Apostrophe. When I get downstairs turns out my brother smoking in his bed passed out mid-smoke. Cigarette fell on mattress. Mattress started smoldering. Lots of smoke. Minor fire. My brother was still totally f-ked and didn't know what the big deal was. Mother does not know. My dad taught me how to make basic black powder using sugar, saltpeter, coal and ammonia. Needless to say I had a lot of fun with that and blew up loads of stuff. Needless to say, mom still doesn't know. Also he caught me smoking when I was 13 and the first thing he said was, "Let's not tell mom." I let my 2-year-old son play with his toys on the balcony by himself. He can't fit through the bars so I thought there would be nothing to worry about. I was washing dishes just inside the house when I decided to check on him. He had squeezed himself between the wall bars and was standing on the ledge 2 stories off the ground. I freaked out but didn't yell because if I scared him he could have possibly fell to his death. I got his attention and he squeezed back onto the balcony. He isn't allowed to be out there by himself anymore. Son here. We got caught in a hailstorm while canoeing. And the only way to make sure the canoe wouldn't move in the storm was to have my 11-year-old self hold down the straps in the bed of the pickup. I got pizza. Wings. My oldest son, who was about 14 at the time, was holding all his buddies' Playboy and Hustler magazines. He had hidden them in his treehouse. One day while my wife and I are at work and he is at school, a big windstorm came with lots of rain. When I got home the whole neighborhood had pages of naked women all in their yards. All the women in the neighborhood were so angry and all the dads were about to die laughing. My son and his friends had to pick up all the pages and apologize to our neighbors. Good times. Not a dad. But when I was 3 my dad was giving me a bath and he left for a minute when the phone rang. When he came back I was underwater with no bubbles coming up. He reached in and grabbed me by the ankle and yanked me out of the tub. I coughed up a lot of water and after he calmed down and I stopped crying he explained that I almost drowned and told me not to tell mom. Now, I'm no snitch. But I wasn't brightest 3-year-old, so when my mom came home I got really excited and told her about the new word I learned. She asked me how I learned what drowning was. Hair was still wet. And I looked at my dad. But I could think of anything, so I ran upstairs to my room. She figured it out. Edit. We were camping in the Smoky Mountains in North Carolina. The previous camper had left behind a partial can of Coleman fuel. Purified unleaded gasoline. My son and I decided to give the campfire a head start. We didn't know that the fire pit was still very hot. The fuel vaporized. When we lit it, a river of flame majestically rolled towards our tent 20 feet away. We stood in stupefied horror as it died mere inches away from our accommodations. Simultaneously, we each said, "Don't tell mom." Full stop. My daughter said, "I want a pony." I got pulled over doing 90 in a 65 when I was 16. The cop was nice enough not to give me a ticket but instead called my dad and told on me. My dad just told me that we would never tell my mom about it since I got my lead foot from him anyway. Years later I told the story in front of my mom, completely forgetting that she didn't know about it. Luckily so much time had passed that she didn't freak out too much. Not a dad, but a son. Years ago in a good old Canadian winter, my dad didn't want to go outside to throw a little bit of garbage from the bathroom. It was garbage day. So he decides to throw it into our fireplace. What he didn't realize is that there was a can of shaving cream in the bag. Once everything started burning away, we saw the can and my dad just saw all FCK. We sat there hiding behind furniture for about 5 minutes before it exploded. The doors of the fireplace blew open and shaving cream splattered all over the couch and chairs. All my dad says is, "We need to clean this before your mom comes home." She didn't find out for years. My oldest is only 3. So my story isn't going to be huge. But I remember a situation recently where he asked me if he could have some candy right before bed. My wife was out of the room, so I said yes. But don't tell mommy. After taking a candy, he proceeded to run to the next room and shout, "Mommy, look. Daddy gave me a candy." Never doing that again. My dad and I were once watching the news together and there was this story about a local maid crew that worked topless and the city had been trying to shut them down. We looked over at each other. And even though I was probably only 13 at the time, and knew we'd have the house cleaned the next day, 2 attractive ladies came to the house. My dad assured them it was fine. And they did a great job on the house to boot. My mother still doesn't know 30 years later and brags on us for the deep clean on the house that one time. I was just sitting in my room playing some video games one night when I heard my dad yelling, "WOOO. Ride that meat pony." Confused, I walked out into the living room to see my dad watching PRN on the TV. Never told mom about it, and the phrase "ride that meat pony" has stuck with me ever since. Not a dad, but me and my family took my cousin, whose mom was a health nut, on a trip to Mexico. The whole vacation he gorged himself with pop and chips. The first thing he said to his mom in the airport when we got back was, "I had pop," and proceeded to cry. This is going to get lost. But whatever. Okay. My 9-year-old daughter and I were watching Gods of Egypt. My wife and son, 5, had the sense to abandon that stinkhole of a movie early on. They went and watched something else. So my daughter and I are watching and she says to me, "Daddy, can I say bad words just until the movie's over? I won't tell mommy." Intrigued, I said sure. Expecting her to say shti. That was not to be. Almost every other word was fking. A sample sentence. Why doesn't this fking guy use his fking wings to just fking fly there? The first time she said the word, she looked at me and paused. I feigned shock and horror and she said, "But you said it was okay." Apostrophe. After the movie her extreme potty mouth went away. When I was about 8 I had a really serious bout of flu. Temperature was about 102, which is dangerous. And my dad took loads of days off work to look after me. One day he decided we were going to go to Blockbuster and rent a VHS to pass some time. I chose my favorite film ever at the time. The original BBC version of The Lion, the Witch and the Wardrobe. He chose us Terminator 2. Got home. T2 went in the tape player. Before he pressed play, he made me a hot squash. Ribena with hot water for you heathens, and turned. Said to me, "This film is one of the best films ever. There might be some swearing. Don't tell your mother. Best day ever." Edit. You guys like to point out a mistake. Fucking hell. 102 degrees Fahrenheit. Temperature was about 102 Celsius, which is dangerous. That's not dangerous. That's already dead and your body is still burning. Well, my dad keeps offering me some of his chewing tobacco. I think his reasoning is, if I happen to be curious about doing something stupid, he'd rather have me do it front of him instead of in secret where no one can help me out. Also, I think he really wants to see the look on my face the first time I try it. And take pictures. I chewed from when I was 16 until 2 weeks ago, about 8 years in total. I had to have surgery done 2 weeks ago and I used it as an excuse to not chew, and I'm pretty sure I've kicked the habit. The kid's only 11 months old, so that fun hasn't really started yet. Mom. Though, she has a couple of orphan socks whose companion got spirited away by the dog to his crate for examination via teeth. Dryer must really be eating socks. Babe. I'll keep an eye out for the other one. Sometimes you've gotta be a bro to your dog. Every year my parents have to get health testing for their insurance. This includes a blood test which looks at blood sugars. My dad's family has a lot of type 2 diabetes. And he is pre-diabetic. Poor thing eats healthy and is skinny as a rail. While I was living at home during graduate school, my dad came to my room one night after mom was sleeping. He asked me if I had any booze. Of course I did. But why? He'd read that if you have alcohol at night, then the next morning your blood sugar will be lower. He was sick of not making the cut with the insurance and having to pay more every month because of it. He told me not to tell mom as his blood sugars had been teetering on the edge of passing. So if this didn't work and she found out that he'd been drinking the night before, she would be upset. So my dad proceeded to take a couple of shots of liquor. He ended up passing the test the next morning. This is about my dad. When I was around 8, he woke me up at around 2 in the morning going, "You want to go sledding?" It was the first snow of the season and my dad, a child at heart, was extremely excited. So we walked to a nearby park with a big hill and sled for a couple of hours. We get home, had some ice cream, and went to bed. My mom never found out. Lied to my mom that a friend's parent was going to drive us to the movie theater. It was actually my friend's older brother. We were 11. Older brother had a rundown Pose car. It died on the railroad tracks and the bars came down with us still there. It was a stick shift and he'd just learned how to drive. We were all freaking out. He got it started and out of the way just in time. We decided not to watch the movie, Last of the Mohegans, and just went home. A week later, a different friend's dad's old beat up truck died on the tracks and my friend and his dad died. Accidentally brought my kids to a head shop thinking it was a gardening supply store. As a child of an alcoholic father, we weren't supposed to tell mom he sideswiped the highway barrier, effectively scratching up the left side of the minivan. It's not so much that he was all over the road trying to drive. It's more so that when he couldn't turn around to yell at us and drive in a straight line at the same time. Why was he yelling? Because he told us we were going out to buy mom something for her birthday. What he failed to mention, we'd be spending something like an hour on a job site with his construction buddies beforehand. He was livid that his 3 children, maybe 15, 13, and 10, didn't want to sit in a gravel clearing with a bunch of older men on a Saturday summer afternoon just talking. I was just fine, though angsty, sitting in the van with my CD player,